We have a disease called billionaires on this planet. Don't worry about COVID. The biggest problem facing humanity is the pandemic of billionaires. And some of them, billionaires like Putin, have weapons and armies and propaganda. And some of them have financial weapons. Some of them have oil companies. Some of them have gold mining companies. And if we don't get rid of that disease, and now give them the weapon of artificial intelligence, we got a problem. Because there's no such thing as a victimless billionaire. I grew up in the ass end of Los Angeles, the worst, poorest neighborhood. It's called Pacoima Sun Valley. And I just knew that I just had to escape. Some of the people I grew up with, like one of my friends was a guy named Steve Paddock. He couldn't figure out how to escape until he killed 56 people in Las Vegas and then blew his own brains out. I decided I had a different way to get out. I got lucky, talked my way into some fancy-ass schools, and I got offered some big money jobs, like offered a fortune to work for Goldman Sachs. I'd actually studied economics under Milton Friedman, and I decided, nah. I went on welfare and became an investigator for labor unions in Chicago. My whole life has been about chasing billionaires gone bad. I decided that because the newspapers in America don't ever report the real news, that I had to write it myself. So I was immediately exiled to Britain, went to BBC television, and I wrote for the Guardian newspapers as an investigative reporter. It would take me several days to give you all my stories of just the deep evil. See, you have to understand, there's no way to drill for oil without drilling through humans. So blood and oil are always mixed. Example, in the US in 2010, there was an oil rig, British petroleum oil rig, which blew up, Gulf of Mexico. A dozen guys were just simply evaporated when this rig blew up. And they said, oh, British petroleum, it's just an accident. Oh, these things happen. Oh my God, it's so terrible. Well, in fact, what they didn't say is that they knew that just a year and a half before, in Azerbaijan, almost an identical rig also blew out. Same thing, but completely covered up by the Azeri dictatorship, what I call the Islamic Republic of British Petroleum. So I went to Azerbaijan and uncovered the story. Some of the people I had were beaten and arrested, even though I tried to protect them. But I got the story out, but they knew that they used these, if British Petroleum used this rig and these methods, that it was going to blow out again. They figured they'd take the chance. You know, you pay off the victims. It's cheap. When I went to Azerbaijan, I was put under arrest. Not a lot of people come out of that easily, but luckily I was working for British television. I was able to get my way out through. I was able, believe it or not, to run out. I said I had to use a toilet. And I ran into a restaurant and ordered a banquet. So I just had all this food for everyone. And in the meantime, I was able to get a message to Britain to get me the hell out of there. I get sued by billionaires. I get threatened. BBC television gets threatened. The Guardian was sued by George Bush's gold mining company. I had uncovered a story that George Bush Sr.'s gold mining company had gotten a gold mine in Tanzania, except it was already being mined by Tanzanians, by the locals. So they had their little tiny, what they call jewelry mines, these 20, 30-foot deep little mines where they got little specks of gold. So when Bush's company got the mining concession, they had to get rid of the miners. So the company they were buying it for with the government simply ran bulldozers over the property, sealed up the mines, and buried 50 miners alive. That story's never been told in the U.S. And I told that story in The Guardian And we got sued. That's scary. The Guardian, by the way, doesn't have insurance because who's going to insure the Guardian? Do all these investigative reports. So we were sued by Bush's gold mining company. And I had a big international campaign, was kind of run by Bianca Jagger, thanks Bianca, which at least saved me and the Guardian from complete destruction. I went down into the Amazon to investigate what was supposed to be massive toxic oil damage caused by drilling by Texaco, which is part of Chevron Corporation now. And so I went there to this really remote these villages, the Kofan Indians. And sure enough, I could put a stick in their water and pull up sludge. They had pustules all over their bodies from the oil contamination. And Chevron said it didn't exist, and they went after everyone who tried to expose it. And in my case, they tried to get me fired by BBC. I had to go through a year. In Britain, they have these like trials if you have a complaint. So they kept me off the air for a year, but I won. Because I had the evidence, I had the film, I had the truth. A lot of people like to say, oh, the world is in black and white and good and evil. Oh yeah, it is. If you've lived my 71 years, it's been pretty black and white. You know what the hell evil is. And this is a fight to make sure that evil doesn't profit. If you see Ukraine as just its own little thing, or some people think it's, we're bringing back the Cold War or something, no. It's just one more front in World War III. And World War III is not about the West, the East, any of that. It's about evil. It's about decency and respect for life versus the salesman of death. For example, one thing I'm doing now in America, one of the big things I work on is in America, we don't let everyone vote. That's our secret. You're not supposed to tell anyone else in the world. We're supposed to be the great goddamn democracy. But we aren't. We especially block black people, Mexican Americans, and Asian Americans from voting by the hundreds of thousands. It's about how they're using a combination of violence and really sick laws to stop people from voting. For example, in the state of Georgia, where the Civil War is still being fought, usually not with guns, anyone can say that person can't vote. And the last election we had in Georgia, Republican vigilantes, I call them, challenged 250,000 black people and said they couldn't vote. I exposed the story, I fought it, I filmed these people. And you got people who literally, I have one guy who challenged 4,000 black soldiers, I kid you not, American soldiers, because they're sent to military bases, so they're not in their state. So he says, well, they don't live here, they can't vote. So I had one black soldier who was assigned to a military base because he's one of our top specialists at the Pentagon trying to design a new weapon for Ukraine. They stopped him from voting. He's an American soldier. They stopped him from voting because this guy who dresses up like a Old West gunman with a 6-gun and bullets, it's a loaded gun. So when I challenged him, I had to be very careful. I really have to be very careful in my work because these guys are armed. I was in a doctor's office and some real working class guy, I mean, with his working class dad, wearing shabby clothes. They looked and probably were dock workers. Anyway, this working class kid brushes up against me and I think, and kind of touched my pocket. I thought, I stole my wallet. So I reach into my pocket and he slipped in a note that said, thank you for speaking for those who can't speak for themselves. I still have that note. That's the victory. That's the hope. I'm actually a very sentimental guy. Everything makes me cry. I have this fight with myself every day. Is it hopeless or hopeful? My job is to uncover darkness. I want to quit like every other day. But, you know, I told you about that kid who put a note in my pocket thanking me. I can't quit. I'd like to quit. In fact, one thing I've promised myself that my next book is a book of poetry and short stories. But I have a feeling I'm not going to be quitting too soon.